Hello, everyone, and welcome again to the Professional Artist. Once again, I am Lazarus Chernik, guest host for Echo Chernik, my wife, and welcome to. Sorry to turn something else off. I'm still new to this. Uh, Welcome to United Public Radio Network 107.7 out of New Orleans. We are simulcasting on YouTube and Facebook and Twitch, I believe. And this episode is sort of a makeup episode for last time. I was supposed to talk about art direction last time and creative direction sometime in the future. Well, this weekend is Emerald City Comic Con in Seattle, and that's where Echo is exhibiting right now at and the second floor in the near the Artist Alley at 20104, I believe, by the window. She's having a great time. She's talking to lots and lots of people, lots of fans. And this week, I wanted to talk about creative direction, but I have to sort of pick up the pieces from last week a little bit. I was talking about art direction and the role, and I was talking about art, and I was trying to share my screen, and I don't think I was actually able to do that. So what I'm going to do is attempt to do it this time. I just need to see if I can get this to work. Let's see, present, share screen, and select a tab to share, window. And let's see if that actually worked. I'm sorry for squinting on one of my eyes. I have distance issues. And yes, this is not my greatest presentation. Okay, it doesn't look like I'm going to be able to get that to work. So instead, I'm just going to move on to creative direction, and we will. Oh, is that how you do it? Ah, okay. Still learning. So last week I was talking about my book cover and what I was doing with it. And I talked about it, but I didn't actually get a chance to show it because I didn't know how to share it with the screen. So I'm going to try and start over a little bit. This is the finished book cover. As was created by Chris Casciano and myself with a little bit of final touches. And the piece that he turned in as beautiful was quite beautiful, but it was different. Actually, this isn't even the first version. Let's see. This is the version he sent originally. So, as I was describing, art directors are an artist's best friend. At least they're supposed to be, and their client's best friend. The role of the art director is to ensure that every artist on the project is leading towards the same goal, the success of the project. In this case, the success of a book cover is about being engaging, telling the story, and getting people to say, I want to know more about that. So in this case, I didn't want to be literal of the book. It would be very difficult. In fact, most book covers are not literal. They're just, they just allude to the content. In this case, the novel is about a woman in the city of Atlanta with Chinese ancestry. And she has it's urban fantasy. So there are dragons and magic involved and some really powerful, evocative imagery about the end of the world. And this is what Echo led him to come up with. Absolutely exquisite. It's dynamic. It's dramatic. There's almost nothing. There's nothing to complain about this at all. However, there were specific elements about this that needed changing to perfect it for the book cover. Specifically, I hope you can see my cursor, the bell here. This bell, while is an ancient traditional shape, it does scream the Liberty Bell. Most Americans, English-speaking people, are going to recognize this as what they think of as a more modern bell type. And it kind of is more modern than the one that's in the book. Also, that as I said last time, that there is, she's wielding a katana. Well, the character is Chinese, not Japanese. So I needed the sword to be a different style. And then her face, well painted, doesn't convey the emotion that is needed to sell the entire piece. I mean, the drama in the texture and the rendering and the painting is exquisite, but her face is rather lackluster. It doesn't say very much. So I gave him those instructions of this and some reference on what I wanted. So the first thing he did was he modified the bell. I gave him reference of what one of the more ancient style of Asian Chinese Tibetan bells were, and he used that. But he went so far as to change the bell tower as well, and then even echoed it over here with even more structure. He changed the sword so that it definitely fits. It's a Chinese double-bladed sword. The handle is a little bit long at first, but the reality is they had swords like that. It just that people who play Dungeons and Dragons might be familiar with like a hand and a half type swords. Those were not unique to the West. They had those swords all over. Yes, he was converting the long katana handle to this, and she's not holding it great. But the reality is the character is not a sword master. That's not the main point of the story. The sword is more of a symbol than anything. But at this point, he didn't touch the face. He was, we had to talk about it a little bit more, and I had to send him some other references. And he then added this face. Now, specifically, what he added was, here we go. A little. Sorry, I'm trying to pop it open here in. Okay, he delivered this. This is the face that I wanted. She's dramatic. She's glowering at you. There's emotion there. There's a reason. My concern about this one is that she really was sort of almost aloof. Like, yes, you caught me carrying this sword as I'm walking across the street. Hi. This one is more engaging. Definitely, there's more drama. There's more emotion behind it. And this is definitely closer to the character. This is the character. I was extremely happy. So he handed this over to me, and there was one last change that I needed to make to it, and that was the fire. I needed to, there's fire is a symbol throughout the book. The color red is a symbol of the book, so I I adjusted it from being more pink and magenta to being more bright red, and I gave the fire imagery because, as I said, it takes place in Atlanta. And those of you who know the history of Atlanta, that their symbol is the phoenix because it was, it resurrected after being burned to the ground. And in the novel, there's a threat of being burned to the ground again. So as the art director in this project, yes, I was the author, but but as the art director, the point was not to change what the artist was trying to do. I didn't tell him to redraw anything. I didn't tell him that that he did anything wrong. It was, hey, your style is absolutely excellent for this project. You're doing great. That here are elements that you need to do in your style that the project needs to sell. It needs to have a bell that fits the history and fits the story and doesn't confuse people. It needs to have the correct sword. So again, it doesn't confuse people from it being Japanese. And the main character needs to be engaging because the book is primarily about this character's growth. And you need to see that it's about this character. You're not following this epic group of many people on a journey. You're following this one woman's experience. And that is how we translate from this over to turn that off. And there we go. Sorry, still getting used to the software. Now we go to art creative direction as opposed to art direction. Art directors are responsible for a project. Sometimes art directors can be responsible for multiple minor projects. Some companies just give both roles, give everything to a single art director to do. The creative director is unique to a few industries, primarily advertising and media. In advertising, the creative director can either be an artist or a writer. In both cases, that their roles are identical. They just have different backgrounds and different preferences on how they work. Outside of those two industries, creative direction is often held by the marketing department or by, which is a business degree, or by the owner, some executive who has convinced the company that they can be in charge of this. What does a creative director do? The creative director is responsible for a massive project or a massive campaign. My last gig was in advertising. I was one of 3 creative directors. Actually, I was a creative director. I had one creative director peer, and then we had a VP creative director who was, and then we had an executive VP creative director. So we had 4 people on this one project. But this project was $110 million annual budget to produce. There was a lot to do. I handled everything that was related to the internet. So all the internet ads and all the websites and all the email blasts that went out everywhere. Another creative director was responsible for collectively the client's separate individual projects. Because the client had one main brand, and then it had lots of little smaller brands. And the smaller brands did not total up to greater than the large ones, but it was still need to be managed and managed specially. So they gave it to that person. And then the VP creative director was in charge of the overall everything in a way. But he let us lead our departments. What he did was he led the print department and print campaigns, and then we followed his lead in a way. And then the executive vice president, creative director, was actually the face in front of the primary client. When you're dealing with a Fortune 500 company, there are so many different levels. You have the corporate headquarters and the board. That's our EVP CD worked with. Then you have all the regional levels, and all the regional levels were the ones that the 3 of us shared. The EVP worked directly, as a VP worked directly with the EVP to oversee the entire brand. And then myself and the other CD oversaw the execution of the brand into the different media or the different the different strategies, because there was just so much to do. We had almost 50 creatives working on on this campaign for this client, of which easily 10, 15 were art directors at any one time in charge of different projects. And then we had over 100 account reps dealing with the client nationally all over. Inside media companies, like, for instance, Disney or Marvel, those studios that are producing things, the roles break down slightly differently. But the creative director, regardless of what their background is or why they're in the role, they're still in charge of what's called the brand of the project, the campaign. You can have a single creative director overseeing the campaign of a movie, for example, or a single creative director in charge of national, everything to do with a new car being released worldwide or nationwide. The art director is the artist's best friend and the client's best friend. The creative director is the bane of the art director's existence. That's not entirely true. Reality is that every creative director has a different role depending on the project. The creative director sees the greater vision of how everything ties together to a single brand. And I keep throwing the word brand out. Let's explain that. The word brand is yes, I am recording. The word brand represents how it represents the totality of the experience inside the mind of the consumer. It's a complicated word because it sounds easy. It sounds like, a cattle brand, but it's not just the symbol slapped on. It's what does that symbol mean? Because public relations can go up and down. That a brand can suffer from massive problems, or it can get incredibly elevated based on events that have nothing to do with how the company is deliberately trying to manage itself. Accidents happen, fortunate things happen. And so if I were to say a brand name, such as a popular beverage, that some portion of the public is going to have really enjoy that beverage and they'll have a positive experience with it. Another portion of the public will have never experienced it at all. And another portion of the public will have, it will not be their favorite product. Maybe even have negative ramifications for it. The totality of that is the brand. Brand management is part of marketing because it involves a lot more than just an advertising component, rather a lot more than just telling people what they should think. It's, as I said, public relations involved in it, events, media opportunities, testimonials, all those wonderful things. Advertising and product packaging design and placement and, for instance, sodas, if you're talking about the billboards and who's drinking it and what the vending machines look like and what the in-store promotions look like. All of those things are visual and part of advertising. And so the creative director is responsible for implementing the marketing department, so the vision. Yes, everyone wants their soda to be delicious. Everyone wants their soda to think it's the greatest thing on earth. However, how do you do that? Coca-Cola has a huge element to it of nostalgia. Yes, it's one of the oldest sodas, but um, it plastered across the country so fast at such an early time that many people literally have had generations growing up drinking it. And it's not as much about the flavor as it is the flavor brings back memories. Yes, it's a delicious soda. There are lots of delicious sodas out there, but it's also comfort food. My mother was addicted to Coca-Cola and she raised me with it. Yes, I drank Pepsi and a bunch of other sodas at the same time at various points in my life. But I keep going back to Coca-Cola because there's a comfort level there that I just recall with my mother. Therefore, Coca-Cola's brand doesn't try to deviate from what people already know about it. That's why they came up with a campaign called Coke is It. That's all they needed to say, because everyone who was addicted to Coke already knew what it was. That was what it was. That's what we wanted. That's all it needed to be. They weren't changing anything. Contrary-wise, Pepsi wanted to cut into that business, and so for several decades, at least two, they tried to push that they were the drink of a new generation. This drink of a new generation was their tactic, was their strategy to eat away at that nostalgia and say, hey, if you don't have that nostalgia or want to rebel against that nostalgia, drink Pepsi, drink our product. So that was the marketer's vision. Tactically, the creative director's job is to figure out how to convince people of what this message is. So if I were the CD in charge of Pepsi's campaign, and I'm using this because it's decades old. This is basically the Cola Wars from the 80s, but it hasn't changed. It's just great to illustrate. My goal would be have all these art directors who are excellent artists in their own right. All of us would come up with ideas creatively on how to convince people and convince younger people what it is. Obviously, because of my role and my age, I am not that generation, so I would need to do research on what does this new generation want? Who are their idols? What do they want? The quote unquote new generation of 2025 is not the same as the new generation of 1985. What are they interested in? Who are their heroes? And what colors and ideas come forth? Sometimes I would have art directors with ideas that would compete and other ideas that might go together or might be spliced together into a single thing. As a creative director, my job is to ensure that these things work correctly. If an art director positions something and it doesn't fit the message, it doesn't say this is a new product. It doesn't say this is for young people. That I have to nudge them in the right way. If it seems to not skew young enough or skews too young, this is what the creative director works with and approves and the creative director must approve everything to make sure that it goes through. And the creative director almost never works alone. They're part of a team. They're part of the marketing department. The marketing department and creative director work hand in hand. And which is one of the reasons why not every business has a creative director. Often the marketing director will fill that role and they'll work directly with an art director. Maybe it's because the company is not large enough to have that role in there. They hire an art director and a marketing director to do that alone. I've been that person as well on both sides. I've been both the marketing director for it and the art director for it, which is how I ended up as a creative director. And there's so much to say. Art-wise, you're watching this because you won't probably want to get into the art industry and see where you fit. So agencies like ad agencies or companies hire artists, rarely hire full-time artists, but they hire mostly contract artists to execute these visions. As these campaigns fluctuate in success, they need new creatives. They need different creatives. They need different creative work. And you can watch and see companies vacillate if you pay attention. That trends come through. Old Spice is a great example. That Old Spice came up with this campaign to be rather silly and bombastic and hire this one actor who took media by storm, created his own memes. And after a while, they moved away from him and they started hiring other people. Well, they brought him back not once, but twice. That for some reason they just they do other campaigns, but they bring him back consistently. For some reason they've decided that his particular presence and how he and what he gets out of the fan base or the audience is singularly unique and can't just be replaced. Then you have Geico. Geico had 2 or 3 campaigns running simultaneously. Yes, there's the gecko, but they also had caveman, and they had something else. And they were running simultaneously because they were afraid of people getting tired of just one, and that people would eventually get drained just seeing the green gecko all the time. And then they saw the caveman. Actually, I think it was the caveman that came first. And people would react to it like, oh, this is different. Oh, they brought this back. This brought that. And they were running simultaneously to get people's attention. Progressive did a bunch of things. They've hit on character flow. That's been around for a long time. Liberty Mutual has the Limu Emu. That's been pretty successful, apparently. It's been going on for a couple years now. So, but you'll also see campaigns that just absolutely fail. They'll come out and they'll make a splash and they'll vanish. They just won't go anywhere. Or it'll be a campaign for a company that is constantly trying to revitalize its customer base. And that can either happen from the audience not reacting well enough to a campaign, or actual internal politics, that someone has a campaign, it was successful, they get promoted, someone new comes into the job, and they want to make a mark for themselves. And so they say, I can do better than that campaign. And they introduce something, and it may not work at all. And so they'll cancel it. They'll go back to the old one, or they'll do something completely new again by the next person that comes in. And you'll see them turn over very, very quickly as, these are those quote unquote dynamic workplaces that advertise for employees. Are you ready to work for such a dynamic employer? That usually means that they've got a lot of flux going on inside, idea-wise. So for one campaign, they may hinge everything on one artist. Barnes & Noble did that years ago, that they got a woodcut artist. For the life of me, I cannot remember his name. And they hired him to basically do the stores across their entire country and They featured his art in their ads and on their products, on their bags, everything. And then eventually, I think their demand outstripped it. I don't think he was the only one who did his woodcuts. Um, I think they hired other people to do similar woodcuts because they started deviating and changing styles. Either that or the artist was just evolving. But then they stuck with him for years, many, many years. Especially when they're going to invest something going into the stores. They're not going to redecorate the stores every year. Um, so we may stick with a single artist, and that is every illustrator's dream, is to become known for a product or a brand. In the fantasy world, Magic the Gathering has sort of captured, and Dungeons and Dragons have captured the epitome of fantasy art. And everyone wants to do fantasy art for Dungeons and Dragons and Magic the Gathering because those are the brands that everyone recognizes and you can associate with. Well, those are great, and those can be profitable for an artist, but they're not the only ones out there. There are lots and lots of game companies and publishers that do fantasy art. A lot of them that do sci-fi art. But even Magic and D&D turn over. Yes, they will stick to people who deliver on time or fans really love or they really love, and they'll work with them. But they hire so many artists. They have so many projects going on that it just turns over. There's always a new crop of brilliant young fantasy artists coming up. There's always, someone new. Let's try them out. Let's see how they go. Which is why it's incredibly important as a young artist to make sure you deliver everything on time. Because as great as you are, they are turning over artists. And when they're looking at their list of 50 artists that they're working with to get a project done, they're immediately going to decide or go through and check off the ones that didn't deliver. Art may look beautiful, but it wasn't on time. Yes, there are some famous stories by popular artists who don't deliver on time, but they had to earn that right. They really, really had to earn that right. And this is where reputation and relationships matter. Echo. She's not known for a single brand. She's worked with lots and lots and lots and lots of different brands. However, the thing I'm most proud of her for is that she is a regular with a number of agencies. In fact, so she'll do a work for a company and for an agency, and she'll do a project with them. And she'll work with them, and she'll spot things that aren't quite right, and she'll talk with them about them. And as their hired expert, she'll offer advice and changes to improve it. That even if they don't agree with it, they respect her position, the way she brings it up to them, and she delivers on time. So many, many occasions that the agency will call her up later and say, "Hi, we have this new project. It's not completely in your style, but we really liked working with you. Would you be able to or give it a shot and try the styles? We'd rather work with someone that we're comfortable with than someone new." And she usually goes, "Yeah, I'll give it a shot." And that's why her portfolio has so many different styles on it and so many different published projects, because she's built that relationship by being professional and being easy to work with. As a creative director, as an art director who's working with artists, I'm hiring somebody to do what they do, but I'm not hiring a problem. I'm hiring someone to solve a problem. And my favorite expression in this industry is, if I hire you and you do your job and you deliver the project, you'll get paid. If you spot a problem and you fix it and you make my life easier and deliver on time and make the project, then you'll get a paycheck and you'll get your name in my Rolodex, because I need people to help solve problems. My job is to solve everybody else's problems. I don't need someone to bring me more problems. I don't need to hear about what's going on behind the scenes. I'm sorry, my family has mental health issues as well, but it's not an excuse for delivering late on a project, because, and I said this once in the art director thing, but it might have been deleted. So I'm going to say this. As a creative director over a huge project, a campaign, this campaign is supporting selling a product or service for that these employees nationwide are required to sell or perform for them to get paid and for them to feed their families. If the product or service isn't supported with campaigns to tell people to come buy them and use the service, not enough people are going to buy the product or use the service. The people who are employed with the product or service can lose their jobs. The agency who put it all together that delivered late, well, the company is not making enough money. The company is not going to pay the agency. They may even sue the agency. So everyone who works the agency's job is at risk. That the strategy of the campaign put together by the marketing department and the tactical plan and and all the elements that were put together, and all the people that pieced together the campaign, all the ads, everything, that we're all going to use the one work of art. One work of art was going to be in magazines, on TV, in videos, on billboards, on products. All those things were not done by a single artist. You have teams of artists sitting there waiting for this illustration to come in for them all to use at the same time. Everything Here we go. Everything in the world that was designed comes to the illustrator to execute, that then is distributed to everybody that needs to use it. This single point of failure is what an illustrator's job is. That's why you have all these committees and all these art directors and creative directors all focusing to help and want to ensure that this works correctly. I don't know if Echo said this enough. It is extremely common for people to come to her and say, we've been working on this campaign for a year and a half. This is a brand new product or project. It's going to launch for this Christmas. This is, the entire business hinges on this. And we've gone back and forth internally for like 3-4 months on who the correct illustrator was for this. And we decided upon you. Everything's due in 2 weeks, or is due by Friday. I mean, they've been working on for a year and a half, but they only give her 1 or 2 weeks to execute. And you can get frustrated with it, but that's the reality of it. They're preparing for something to, preparing everything so that it makes the illustrator's job as easy as possible. And we are very careful about hiring the right artist for it. And the right artist is not just about style, it's about the relationship and about trust. So as the creative director, that when art directors come to me with their project, again, trust. They need to deliver that on time. They need to deliver it correctly. I'm not there to yell at them. I'm there to support them and make sure, find out what their problems are and how to deal with it. That the art director can't get a hold of the illustrator. Well, I have to step in and I have to manage both the marketing director, the client, and help find a way of reaching out and getting a hold of the illustrator. That a new project has come down. The marketing director says, "Oh, by the way, we've decided to we're taking all this and we're going to do a insert into this popular sitcom, and the product is going to have a billboard. Is going to have a product placement in the cafe where all the actors sit around. So we need to have something that's customized to what that cafe is, but features this product. And this cafe is a fictitious thing." I'm like, okay, I need to get the art director who is qualified. I need to find an artist, if necessary, that would be able to execute, it on time and to fit the style, because it's something new and it's something that you're only going to get an opportunity once. It's like they're shooting the episode starting on Wednesday, so you need to get it done by Monday and hand it over. You can't wait, because if you miss that shooting day, it doesn't get out there. And not only is the money gone, so is the relationship, and you may not get that opportunity with that TV show ever again. So illustrators are responsible for so much. It's not just about your artistic vision and your style, but never get rid of that. That is why we're hiring you. We look for your style and we look for your voice. We hire you based on how much we trust you. And then hopefully I didn't contradict myself, but hopefully I'm just repeating myself over and over again. There are times in which companies have internal issues with between art directors and creative directors. A number of times Echo has worked on projects, and I've been there right beside her, where she'll work with an art director on a project. They'll give her the art notes. She'll sign off the art notes. She'll sign the contract, and she'll work with somebody for a while. And then suddenly, out of the blue, that art director is no longer there, or no longer responding, or their emails are written differently. That's the weird one. Suddenly, someone else has stepped in, and they're changing things. So sometimes Echo has an agent who can push back and say, no, the contract was based off of these original art notes. If you're making changes, that's more money, and the deadline has to change. Or the deadline doesn't have to change, but there's even more money for a rush fee for all these differences. Sometimes Echo has to deal with that herself. It took really experience with agents, art agents, for her to understand how to deal with them and how to speak with them. Generally speaking, a reputable company will know that this is how it works. It's the disreputable ones that will pretend, that will hide. Echo once did a poster many, many years ago, and she was hired and told she can come up with her own design in an Art Nouveau style, and they gave her tons and tons and tons of photo reference to do all sorts of things. She did about 20 different sketches back and forth, and suddenly, out of the blue, the company's art director was either fired or dismissed from the project, and the creator stepped down, and he handed her, said, "You will use this photo." Exactly. "You will use this." Exactly. To this day, I have a bone to pick with that creative director. That's not how you work. That it might have been that he wasn't really thrilled about the directions she was going in, but then that should have been addressed in advance. As again, you hire somebody for what they do. You don't try to convince them to do something else. That number of times, several times, that she'll work on a project and suddenly the art notes will change. Something, she'll already do things, and that they'll come back and say, "Oh, that's approved." Then a week later, they'll say, "Okay, well, let's go back to these, and change them again." "Oh, it's been unapproved." I'm like, there's no such thing as unapproved. I'm sorry, creative directors, art directors, your bosses everywhere, marketing directors, there's no such thing as unapproved. There's no judge in this country that will allow you to unapprove something. The word approval has a legally binding thing that says it's approved, it's done, you owe money for it. Done. Don't even try threatening artists about it. But they do. I got a project where she bought onto the project. She signed onto the project based on their art notes. And there were scheduled meetings with the project manager. And the project manager in this case was also the owner of that business. And they skipped meetings regularly, but kept demanding her to meet deadlines. Well, she's had a schedule, and the schedule to meet these deadlines was based off of, income. She literally set aside 6 months worth of work to work exclusively on this project. She wouldn't get paid until the entire project was done. She couldn't take on other work until that project was done. So literally, he was going to starve her out. That, she wouldn't show up to meetings. She couldn't show up. She couldn't do the work. She couldn't accept other work, because if he did show up out of the blue and start again, then she'd have twice as many projects to work simultaneously. So she got him to agree that she could just continue. And that finally he would show up at meetings. He would look at things that were pretty much finished. And he would look and go, yeah, this is good. This is good. Okay. So let's have this character in a completely different pose. And I know that I told you could have this person could be anything that you could imagine, but I've decided, I was in the bathtub last night and I decided that I think this guy needs to be bald and have have a completely different skin color. It's like, the painting's done. And he said, well, I didn't approve it. I was like, well, okay, but what about this other character that you did approve? They're related to them. Like, oh, well, that character will have to change too. Well, that's approved. And after you approved that, that's made this thing. This is where the unqualified creative directors come in. The people who are taking the role of adjusting the project. They're not considering everything that's involved in the creation of the artwork or in the project. You will run into these. As an illustrator, as an artist, you have to stand by your guns. I have about 10 minutes left. So I know I've probably seemed like a fire hose sending out tons of information here. But I want to address something that is very important to this industry and to artists at every level in the commercial world. I am a mentor. I enjoy talking about art. I love sharing my experiences. I've worked with some of the biggest businesses in the world at various levels. I've worked with really small clients. I've worked with artists in games that get paid almost nothing. I've worked with some of the greatest artists I don't want to say in the world, but in the country, which could very well be the world. I have relationships with people all over. I've done this a long time, and I have a formal background in this. And as you can tell, I love to talk. I've been an educator. I've taught programs formally in classes and colleges. I've done corporate training. I've been to pseudo retreats as one of the judges of Illustrators of the Future. I wrote the curriculum there that was used for a couple of years. It's been massaged a little bit with, at the time I wrote it because I needed to be the one to teach everything. And Echo and I actually taught everything. We did that for a couple of years, and then we started getting in judges that would be able to spend more time with them. And so we share the load, which is great. What I mean is that information should be free. Information about the industry and how to be good at it and how to do it. Echo and I will give that away to anybody who asks. That we have experience with so many things and so many backgrounds. We have so many friends that we talk to that we will tell you what works, what doesn't, and why, and how things happen and how this could have happened and how you can help make it work. Everything from the technical aspect of creating artwork to the strategic part of designing the artwork or understanding how it works or how it goes in or how the industry and how to get paid. We will share all of that. There are, and this is not trying to start a war, there are people out there who consider this information to be sacred and that you have to find a way of earning it from them, whether that's paying them for courses and lectures, or buying them a beer, or earning their respect. And I want you to know that whatever level you are at, okay, I'm not the only one who will talk about this and share information. Just if anyone is offering information as an exchange for something, just take it with a grain of salt. Learn from them. All right. They probably have got great information. They're using it for, they're turning teaching into a job. And the problem with turning teaching like that into a job is that suddenly your brand as an educator becomes primary. When you're talking and you're teaching something that people have to trust that you are the one with the answers. So you can't back down or say anything like, well, in some circumstances, it's like this, it's like that. Well, maybe. Well, the reality is that there are qualifications to everything. And someone like me, not always me, who's willing to tell you all the varieties and ways things can happen and things can go and all the different techniques that can be used, both artistically and everything else. We have, more than likely, we're there trying to help you, not trying to help ourselves. And I bring this up because I have encountered, and there are some people out there who are disingenuous about the information that they share. And I have been in conversations, or I have been near conversations in which there is someone with very little experience who is holding court and, trying to get all the youngins to flock to them and to listen to what they have to say, in exchange for some sort of fealty or profit-making process. That there are people, a lot more than just me, that an Echo, where you can just walk up, talk to them. As an illustrator, the best place to find them is places like a Comic-Con. That it's not even just, you may look at somebody, oh, they're a comic artist, oh, they're a fantasy artist. We're artists. We do pretty much everything. Todd Lockwood is a wonderful man and a good friend. And he started off his career in advertising before he moved, primarily into fantasy illustration. And so he and I get along great because we both understand how it all comes together and what things are. He doesn't always have time to talk, but he knows his stuff, and he's very nice and very friendly. And it wouldn't hurt for you to buy him a drink. It's just, not required. But he's at Emerald City Comic Con, and has a booth, and you can just say hi and talk to him, and he's wonderful. He may not always have time to talk at that moment, but he's someone like us that you can trust, because we're not going to turn around and say, hey, here's my website for you to go to, here's my book for you to read. One day I might write a book, but it's going to be written from my point of view. It's not going to be written from my point of view is to help and to be a mentor. It's coming up in the end. Mentorships are very important to me, but it doesn't need to be a regular thing. As far as I'm concerned, I can fire hose as much information as someone needs in a short period of time, especially over given things to be implemented. It's all about the result. As a creative director, the result is the success of the project. As a mentor, it's the success of the artist. In fact, a creative director is always a mentor. They're a mentor to the artists, to the staff, to the art directors, and they have to be a mentor to the marketing team and to the business departments who don't understand what the problems are inside of the art department. I love writers, but they're not always visual. And sometimes they can write things and try to convey a visual that is not executable. There's a famous example of art notes that wanted a half-page painted illustration going into a book and the art notes talked about tilting and panning and crane shots and whirling, spinning things as if this was a grand movie set. It just wasn't possible. So the art department got panicked. The illustrator panicked because they realized it was impossible to do what they were asking, but didn't know what a level of authority they had to be able to just not do it and to do what was actually physically possible. And I had to step in and make that conversation happen and find out exactly where things were. Turns out it was an easy solution. The person writing it was sort of just giving ideas of what they imagined, and then hope the artist could just find one still shot in that entire thing that they could use. But again, communication. And we have to teach everybody at every level what's going on. I have about 2 minutes. I have not seen any questions yet, but I am going to double check. I'm looking at myself on YouTube and I'm scratching my chin and stuff. Who have you ever had to deal with artists who push back against proposed edits? By James Drucker. Absolutely, I have. However, it's extremely rare for me to deal with them if I'm the one who selected the artist. This is where the trust level comes in. I have seen it happen with others when artists don't take the project seriously. I have encountered artists who have said that they're an illustrator when they've never illustrated in their life. Illustration is taking someone else's idea and executing it to convey that idea. When I look at a portfolio, especially a young person's portfolio, and it's nothing but original art out of their own minds, I do worry, and I usually don't hire them because I need to see that they can convey someone else's idea. Now, if they put in their portfolio, and this is what colleges teach you to do. You do an illustration for a product or a service that is not your own. There is a huge difference between illustrating whatever comes into your imagination and illustrating a story that someone tells you. And if you can't illustrate someone, I have seen illustrators literally quit projects and say, on second thought, I don't actually want to be an illustrator. I just want to paint my own stuff. Yes, I have encountered that. I'm sorry, not personally. I've seen that happen. That's why the trust thing becomes incredibly important. That I only want to work with people who are dedicated to doing that. Thank you, James, for the question. Looking to see if there's any other questions. I don't think so. And our time is up. Thank you very much. I have been Lazarus Chernik, guest host of The Professional Artist, episode 43. You're listening to the United Public Radio Network, 107.7 out of New Orleans, simulcast on YouTube, Twitch, and Facebook. Thank you very much for joining. Echo will return next week. And I think I'm getting the hang of this. Take care. Bye-bye.